Hi everyone, welcome to another installment of my weekly predictions. This time we're going to be talking about predictions for the week of April 1st, 2019. First, let's quickly recap predictions and events for the previous week, the week of March 25th. As far as the market directions, I was correct for about 2 days out of 5, so I was correct about Thursday being a strong down move, and I guess Monday the markets were mixed and most of them were down, which is what my prediction was. But again, I wouldn't say that was a strong prediction, nor was there a strong down move. For the other 3 days, my predictions as far as just the exact direction were incorrect. As far as the overall, I guess the overall predictions, overall background influence that has to do with Saturn-Pluto conjunction, ongoing transit, as well as the other major influence of Mercury conjuncting Neptune and I guess squared generally by Jupiter. These are the two main predictions, the two main influences in the background. I have seen a lot of events that are associated with that, from the increase of the large-scale earthquakes, so 5 and up and 6 and up all over the world, as well as some events that have to do with either governments basically not getting along, geopolitical tensions, and or leaders of governments being threatened. Obviously we have the ongoing Brexit negotiations, which kind of summarize both of those influences. So negotiations, contracts, and reversal in the contracts of sort of meaning of what the Brexit was supposed to represent versus what's actually happening. So that's the confusion from Neptune. Is conjuncting, uniting the energies with Mercury that has to do with negotiations, contracts, and overall, I guess, tensions and changes in the geopolitical structure and the governmental leadership or leadership of large organizations that were previously well sort of established and old, but now they're being shaken up. That's the Pluto-Saturn conjunction. So again, Brexit kind of falls under that, as well as we had specific news for last week. We have obviously Trump, in the U.S. threatening to shut down the U.S.-Mexico border. There was news about aid being cut off to several South American countries. In Algeria, there was some news about the Algerian army threatening to declare their president unfit. Another interesting piece of news that I saw from Reuters reporting that apparently 6 U.S. companies received authorization to share nuclear power technology with Saudi Arabia. So nuclear power, that would be something that falls under Pluto, and obviously Saturn has to do with things that are kind of permanent and again proceed on the level of governments or really large organizations, because again they require utmost control and organization to kind of be implemented. So that definitely falls in the development of that nature where more countries in the world may acquire such technologies or implement them at the same time, with North and South Node kind of conjuncting these two planets on top of that conjunction by itself is super powerful, but with nodes of the moon conjuncting that, it really kind of indicates a process that is again slow kind of developing, but is going to have long-term effects on really large numbers of people. For better or worse, the interpretation, I will leave it up to you. So let's see, as far as again other news that relate to either mining, again the Pluto and Saturn conjunction may bring a lot of not just earthquakes but devastation or problems that relate again to the mining industry, or just news and major developments, changes in say areas related to steel, minerals, and so forth. And with Neptune conjunct Mercury for basically a really long time, with them kind of Mercury going retrograde and coming back out of that retrograde state on the 27th of March, that again would relate to weather that's really wet, Neptune, but also with a lot of wind, Mercury, and again them being conjunct together for such a long time in Pisces, that again is ruled by Neptune, so again water. There's a lot of emphasis on problems with again flooding and the winds, etc. And we did have a lot of news along those lines. We have this cyclone Adai, I guess that was even the week before, but kind of continuing devastation from that. along with not just people dying and being misplaced, but also problems that kind of usually follow such events, which is, many hundreds of people, I guess over 1,000 people at this point in Mozambique having contracted cholera, which again, that the kind of waterborne disease that would be related to Saint Neptune, but also the spread of any kind of plague or really a large scale both devastation, but also like disease like AIDS, something that is really kind of affects many people and is kind of hard to cure, at least because of mass sort of devastation, is also ruled under like Pluto and negative or stressful aspects from Pluto. So we do have that happening. And another prediction I made specifically for the US that kind of did both come true as far as weather and the actual effect on the economy was that there will be some hard times for the US as far as the I wouldn't say devastation, but problems with land and food growing and farming. And what I have seen, indeed, there were a lot of really bad weather, wet weather, and floods in the Midwest affecting farmers there, which is, I guess, it's the farm belt of the U.S. And interestingly enough, I kind of read up on that. Apparently, farmers, were they were really affected the last 5 years. Their income kind of dropped, and now with all this kind of talk about trade war with China and the, I guess, grain glut, their earnings have come down. So what they were doing, they were storing a lot of like grains and whatever, soybeans, corn, and whatnot in all kinds of I guess bins and storage facilities, and even in the open sort of containers, and all of that got flooded, and either the bins kind of, the grain got soaked and basically expanded so much that those containers, those silos, have burst, or just got soaked with water, and under I guess regulations in the US, the grain now must be destroyed. So they really suffered a lot of devastation from these floods. So we have this combination of the wet weather, again in general, wet and sort of windy weather, as well as indeed the predictions about sort of problems for the US associated with specifically food production and farming were also there. Let's see, and for the news for this week, I guess the conjunction of Mercury and Neptune will sort of continue through about the 5th of April, so we will continue hearing news about the weather, and indeed there is some announcement about the upcoming, I guess, nor'easter storm or cyclone, I'm not sure what the exact term is, for the US that's going to be still coming this week. So let's go back again to kind of recap the last week. There were also news about really major floods in New Zealand. So I guess it was the disaster was declared in the New Zealand's Westland. There was some news about the motor bridge being swept away. And again, what I hear is that apparently it was like once in a 100-year event, like as far as how bad the rains were and the floods. So it is, again, something of note and something I mentioned previously, that pay attention to which areas, for example, this week and previous week were affected by things like earthquakes or major events that have to do with instability in governments. I guess UK comes to mind. So these are the same areas that will continue being kind of affected, pounded, so to speak, by these aspects through about, April, I'd say 12, 14 for this kind of time period. But these aspects will return. These transits will be transiting over the same area. Kind of similar energies will be back in play in about June and September. And again, it's not that they will go away, just that they will intensify in June and September. So June obviously could be another time for floods, even though, say, you're in New Zealand, they can be obviously earthquakes. And New Zealand just suffered a terrorist attacks, which again, Pluto and Saturn is kind of another or a rather serious terrorist attack. Earthquakes, any sort of devastations are potential manifestations of such aspects, as well as the kind of ongoing square between Jupiter and Neptune can bring excessive flooding or excessive wet weather. And again, that's June and September are the peak times. So anywhere where you saw problems during, I guess, this first round of aspects or transits, you would most likely see the intensification and some variation of the same theme, or another manifestation of these kind of problems again. Some sort of plague, large scale kind of sort of problems with health that affect a lot of people, and terrorist attacks, earthquakes, some accidents, some, large structures give way. So again, New Zealand seems to have suffered several hits, so unfortunately they can possibly be the target for additional, problems to come. So let's see. There was also news, and I'm not sure how often that happens. I guess I'd have to look at, specifically a particular domain and kind of analyze events there against the aspects to know of the, whether it's something out of ordinary. But I did make a prediction that there will be last week and actually this week as well increased news about oil, shipments over water, chemicals, bodies of water in general, transportation over water. And last week there was news about Maltese troops having to storm a merchant ship that was hijacked by migrants off of the coast of Libya. This week I've already seen, today again is Monday, I'm recording this a day late because again I had to work all weekend. So on Monday, April 1st, there was really a big kind of a jump, I guess, in the price of oil. So we do have these kind of manifestations that have to do with additional news about, again, water, navy or bodies of water, shipments over water, oil, and chemicals. And let's see, I also made predictions for March 28th, 29th that there may be some announcement about either a new deal or agreement or reversal of some governmental decision. And that's, I guess, when there are additional debates, or maybe the 27th. I can remember the exact days, but again, all of these negotiations about Brexit and which deal, or whether there is no deal. And definitely, like I said before, Mercury conjunct Neptune will give a lot of confusion about signing any sort of major deal. So, and I would say it wouldn't be necessarily considered a reversal, as far as like there was no decision made that there was one deal and then the deal had reversed, but rather that the whole kind of a fact that there was negotiations and there was postponement is, I guess, in a way you can think about it as a reversal, as far as the the vote was for Brexit, and the fact that there was no deal is in a way is a reversal of that decision. But as I said, this will last through about April 5th, and after that, any sort of negotiations between governments or large corporations should kind of go more smoothly, with Mercury being now direct and also kind of getting away from Neptune's influence, although it will still need to exit Pisces for it to be a little bit more, I guess, active. Pisces will still give it a little bit more of that confusing kind of a feel and confusion or delusion about what actually is happening. Let's see, and so there is also, I guess, Mercury is another planet that rules things like, again, transportation in general, as well as like cars and airplanes. And we did have some, I guess, continuous sort of concerns about Boeing and not confusion, but rather, I guess, some problems for it. So that would be another manifestation, again, sort of problems or some news about like cars suffering, or airplanes or airplane companies suffering from some either confusion or something that's kind of not as in their favor. So I guess Boeing is one company that is experiencing that, but it's a very like general aspect. It doesn't necessarily every company will be affected. You'd have to look at the chart for that particular stock for the particular company to know which ones will be more vulnerable, but certainly has affected Boeing. And let's see, lastly, there was a prediction that I made about potentially increased news about prices of gold and silver, 25th through the 27th, and potentially it going down more than usual. And I did see that gold did go down on 27th, actually even more so on 28th. So there was news along those lines. So now let's move on to the predictions for this week. And I think I also, maybe I have failed to mention for last week, there was also news about another kind of in Brazil, another dam being on the verge of collapse, something, you know, that's managed by the same company that Vale, I guess is the name of that company, that had been in charge of the mine that had collapsed, or rather dam that had collapsed 2 months ago and killed 200 people. So again, with the Saturn-Pluto aspect, it is definitely a possibility that we may hear about that, you know, dam giving way. Another interesting kind of, and this is going to be more for predictions for this week, is that there will be on Tuesday scheduled kind of opening of the spillway of the Orville Dam in California, and that's a dam that 2 years ago had suffered catastrophic failure. And it is interesting that they're opening it specifically on Tuesday, and this is the week where, you know, all these kind of buildings, again, that have to do with either water or soil, mining, dam, like again, anything that's supposed to be big, solid, large structure made of stone, steel, these are the ones that are going to be experiencing particular pressure this week and next week, early to mid-April. And the fact that they're opening it and it's already experiencing pressure, it's certainly, you know, I wouldn't say it's a bad sign per se, but it definitely is a sign that that structure is experiencing extra pressure. So any such structures that maybe there are ongoing concerns about them, or that have experienced, you know, failures before, I would definitely kind of pay closer attention to. If, you know, for some reason you're managing those, or there's an investment attached to that, or you live around those areas. So let's see. So continuing for this week then, as far as the actual predictions, let's see. The global predictions are the same as last week. So again, as I said, Pluto, Saturn aspects increase probability, except more so this week and next week, of problems, you know, for some various like leaders of the countries, geopolitical tensions on the rise, governments overturned, some major disagreements among governments, or major agreements being signed with something that's really changing sort of the status quo, the borders. I guess we hear about the Golan Heights decision. You know, I guess the U.S. had recognized, you know, that Israel, I guess, that belongs to Israel or something like that. So things that, again, have to do with sort of sovereignty of the countries, the leadership of the countries, and or sort of the large corporations, especially those that were established, as well as specifically, like I said, large buildings, large-scale construction projects. So we will hear even more news about that. However, the news, again, may be kind of problematic as far as those buildings or structures or government, you know, in Venezuela, for example, or, you know, in UK. Those leaders, they may suffer, you know, potential problems. They can be removed or suffer, you know, extreme sort of unpopularity, changes in sort of reshuffling in the in the parties. So really, you know, major, you know, maybe sort of changes in the borders, and just catastrophes, accidents, nuclear, you know, problems with nuclear plants, like disasters, attacks. Unfortunately, all of that is super sort of heightened probability, especially April 2nd through the 6th this week, and around 10th through, I guess, 12th next week especially. And we will have this Mercury conjunct Neptune through about the 5th of April, so continued sort of confusion about negotiations, wet and windy weather, focus on oil, chemicals, etc. Judge Ginsburg, as I mentioned before, I see that potentially May and June will be a difficult time for her. She either may leave or experiencing really kind of a difficult time. Again, I have not heard anything about her coming back for some time. I'm not sure what's happening there. Let's see. And then for the US specifically, there'll be additional kind of focus on IT, areas like IT, media, social media, aerospace, high tech, you know, like Facebook comes to mind, sort of Twitter, all of these kind of companies, as well as companies that may be generating power, communication, transportation companies, so maybe like Tesla, and as well as focus on rates, loans, credit, debt, taxes, and insurance. So that will be through about April 7th. And with key dates this week will be April 2nd and 4th. So there will be more kind of new announcements. And these announcements may be unpopular and or kind of announcements about some things that are either underhanded, like there were some contracts for some companies that were kind of done through manipulation, or some means that were not appropriate, and or there's some ring, some gang or some ring of, I guess trafficking of children or women was busted, or some other secretive and shady activities, or something that maybe may come up again, like a grocery store chain that maybe, or some store, like retail store chain, where they may have had like a breach, but they haven't announced it. So that's what the U.S. It's like retail sales, communication, transportation businesses, high tech, IT, aerospace. Those kind of businesses may see more kind of public announcements. And again, in April this week, they may be more negative and have to do with some sort of either inappropriate activities or some problems that went underreported. And again, like I said, today is actually April 1st, Monday. I already have seen there, and there was another prediction specifically for Monday that I made on my blog, plastunka.com. So I posted that yesterday and on Sunday. And I did predict specifically for the US for Monday that there will be increased focus on, again, these type of businesses like IT, for example, aerospace, etc. And that they may receive news about maybe either losses or problems with their income and earnings, concerns about the profits. And I saw already there were news about Lyft kind of IPO price, the stock price going down the day after the IPO. And there was also an announcement of a large sort of outage that stranded many airplane passengers for, I guess several hours, at least in the US. So that already have kind of come true, but it will last through about April 7th, generally speaking, and especially Monday and Tuesday for the US specifically. So as far as the stock market direction Monday, I thought it was going to go down. It actually, there was a really large rally today, I guess, on the positive news or expectations of positive kind of news and negotiations with China, or China's economy doing well. So that was already confirmed and correct. Let's see. Then on Tuesday, my expectation is that the market will possibly go down, about 60% probability. However, I believe it may reverse, most likely from down to up in the late afternoon. So regardless of the direction, I think there may be a reversal between what is going to be in the morning versus late afternoon. And then on Wednesday, I expect that the market may go up. Not very confident on that, about 55% probability. Increase that particular day, focus on international relationships and agreements, oil, chemicals, shipments over water, long distance transportation, as well as pharmaceuticals and any sort of legal issues. So any sort of judges, lawyers, acts, again, maybe it could be international decision about some legalizing something, or it could be local within individual countries, but focus on those kind of topics. Thursday, I predict that the market may go down, about 60% chance. And then Friday, kind of the strongest influence of the week. That's where I'm the most confident that this prediction may come true, and about 65 to 70% of it going down. Now, regardless of the direction, again, I think it will be a strong sort of influence day, meaning that the market may see increased volume, there will be increased kind of news, more sort of significant events may be covered, occurring of more significance, again, some major decision by some government leaders, or really major accidents or earthquakes. And speaking of leaders, there may be announcements about new initiatives that potentially may relate to sports, military, activities, either leadership in that area, like new leaders, or it could be new, sort of, I guess, projects that again relate to either sports or military. So it could be some military campaign, for example. And on Friday, there'll be more either the reason for these, say, new campaigns or new leaders or new decisions or new projects, or even protests against maybe those, could be that they're maybe really building up impatience over some ongoing kind of slow implementations by, say, governments of kind of implementing whatever they're promising to implement, but things maybe, again, in people's perception, maybe going too slowly, or there is not enough progress. And so some either entities, meaning some parties, or even, like I said, just general population, may push with anger for either these new projects, or a new leader may emerge that's going to be more radical, more kind of a rash, and that leader or that project may not necessarily have a lot of substance there. But by substance I mean that they may not have sort of a long-term plan, but rather the idea will be just to break the status quo for better or worse. And so it may, either the project or the leader may divide, I guess, the opinions. So the person may be, or the project may not necessarily get a lot of support, or they'll be very divisive, but the idea would be to just break out of this kind of a suspenseful, I guess, suspended sort of existence and make something happen. Something in this case will be perceived as better than nothing, because there will just be a need for this kind of either radical change or sort of explosion, literally, just making something. Again, it could be a radical leader, it could be somebody who is military related, or somebody who is truly just radical because of their nature, and they just are going to do something where they, either make a decision that's kind of unpopular, but they just need to make that decision to make something happen because things are just otherwise too kind of inconclusive or drawn on too long. And I'm thinking this could be maybe something related to UK potentially, or Venezuela, again, with the Saturn-Pluto kind of ongoing. Again, there are definitely dangers for any sort of leaders of countries, anything that's unstable, or buildings that are unstable, that they may be toppled, or leaders may be toppled, or projects that are supported by government may be kind of changed radically, or government may support implement the change that's fairly radical. Again, like I said, with the nuclear power technology implementation, or maybe accidents related to nuclear power, etc. Like maybe, I believe it is in Washington State in the US, there's this facility there where previously they had collapse sort of in the storage area where they're storing nuclear waste. So something along those lines, some things that are kind of unpleasant, and things that were old and not very well taken care of, or old and kind of established, but put to the point where there was just this momentum and things were dragging on and there was no change, and a new radical change may come. And this week, Friday, is a fairly strong influence for that to happen. And then couple specific predictions for China based on the transits to China horoscope for the 5th and 6th of Friday, Saturday. For them, there's an increased probability of an important announcement about the banks or financial institutions or finance related projects, or something along the lines of loans or rates or banks, or I guess financial transactions, maybe about sort of sending money or just the value of the currency. There may be a new projects or a new leader, especially if it's a male leader. And the announcement will be, perceived positively by the public, or kind of popular, sort of something maybe spreading popularity about some service, or popularity, I guess, of currency. By popularity, I mean, obviously that more countries kind of sign up to use either some system, of sending money, or to, make payments in yuan or something like that, or renminbi, I'm not sure. So, then another announcement specific for China relates to areas related to Saturn. So again, something to do with large-scale construction, steel, minerals, kind of, and things that again are supported by the government or involve large corporations, involve projects that are you're building some of these large cities, or you're mining something, or you're really constructing something that's super huge, like a dam or something that's meant to stand and be strong for a long time. So there may be kind of positive news related to those projects. So maybe a new project is really going well, or is beginning of a new project that again is a large-scale construction, or simply that there is a governmental support for these projects, and or the businesses in those areas, they kind of report increased profits, or that the value of related businesses, commodities, or services may increase, such as like the price of steel or something that comes from China, or the businesses that maybe export steel may earn more money or something along those lines. So positive news, I guess, for China on that front, April 5th through 6th. So aside from, like, I guess my sort of curiosity for what the Pluto-Saturn aspect may bring this week, I think hopefully it will not be something terrible, but a mix of curiosity with, I guess, anticipation. Hopefully it will not be something really bad for all of us, but stay safe there, and I guess have fun, and come back to check out this channel and my blog at telesumka.com for more fun predictions. I'll catch you all guys later.